a collection of writings written by different people, some of whom were Solomon, and written in different communities over time. And if you read through it in one sitting, which I really don't recommend at all, it reads like a parent realized their child was leaving for college in the morning and they want to give their kid all of the wisdom and advice they can think of, so they scribble it all down and tuck it in a suitcase. I don't know about you, but I was a little bit like that when my children went off to college. Because when kids are little, you feel like you have all this time to teach them everything they're going to need to know so they can survive in the world. And then before you know it, they are 2 seconds from backing a loaded car out of the driveway. I mean, he knows how to do laundry, right? Can he feed himself? He knows how to access his bank accounts and make sure he has money that's going to last all the year long, right? He knows these things. Is he going to floss? I did not write my own book of Proverbs for either of my kids when they went to college, but I may have called out, "Make good choices," as I said goodbye. Today we are celebrating our graduating seniors at Calvary, and we send them off to college or off to their next adventure so they can become better educated, which on some level involves the acquisition of knowledge, as Joanne mentioned. We want our kids to learn things that will serve them well in life, allowing them to serve the world well with their lives. But reading this passage from Proverbs reminds me that we need more than knowledge. We need wisdom. We need the ability to take that knowledge and apply it to situations our life throws our way. We want our children and our neighbors to be able to discern between the cries of Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly as they walk their straight paths. And as a parent, I can't quite figure out how to commodify wisdom for my kids. I want to just take everything I've learned through the struggles of my own life and just zap it straight into their minds. And I know that's not how it works. My wisdom, such as it is, was acquired when I failed, most often, when I failed forward. Looking back at my life, I realized my wisdom was hard-earned from all those times I crashed and burned and then got back up and tried again. My wisdom was not acquired in a vacuum, though, where I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps, right? Wisdom was gifted to me by people who helped me get back up again. Because sometimes when you fall hard, and you're lying there on the ground with the wind knocked out of you, convinced that it's all over, and then someone reaches out a hand and helps you back up and dusts you off so you can try again. I think about friends who stood by me and strangers who offered by extending kindness toward me when they didn't even know me. I think about people in positions of power and authority who used their resources to help me. I think about the bigger systems that were at place in our society that were able to offer me assistance too. When people and when systems were willing to wade into the messiness of my life to help me up, it taught me to not fear to be there for other people when they fell. I learned wisdom when other people extended care toward me in my life. And that's what we see playing out in this story in Proverbs 9. In general, I'm not a fan of pitting women against each other, as the Proverbs author does in this story, but I trust we can continue to believe that women supporting other women is an operational life motto while we explore the contrasts between Lady Wisdom and the foolish woman. I'm struck by what wisdom does in this passage because it's a lot of work. She hews pillars, she slaughters animals, she prepares wine, she sets the table. And you only need to hew 7 pillars to hold up a giant roof if you're going to have a big house. Wisdom builds her house for a big crowd. She builds it to provide shelter for more people than just her. She cooks a big feast, preparing food for everyone who needs to come. And she spares no expense to make sure people know about the feast, sending her servant girls to gather people in and going out herself to call from the highest places in town. Her welcome is expansive and it is inclusive. She uses what she has to make sure other people are cared for. You who are simple, turn in here. Come, eat my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. On a symbolic level, we see wisdom's invitation when we celebrate communion, when God calls us to a table that has been prepared for us. But on a practical level, wisdom is in the business of bringing other people to a better starting place, feeding them both literally and figuratively so they are equipped to walk in the ways of insight. Because when your basic needs aren't being met, when you're hungry, when you don't know physical safety, when you're in real pain or desperate circumstances, it's really hard to make wise choices in those moments. So wisdom seeks to offer help to those who need it so they can walk in the ways of wisdom. Notice, she does not ask if they deserve the help or if they're worthy of it. She doesn't even really seem to worry about whether or not they want it. She knows the way to build a better community is to put people in a position where they are better equipped to make good choices for themselves. There's blessing in it for her, too, of course, because if you live in a stronger community where more people are able to live by wisdom and good choices, your life's going to be better, too. So if building a better world only for yourself is your goal, you won't find wisdom there. She's busy serving dinner to everyone at her place. Wisdom directs herself primarily toward others. What would the world be like if the blessing of other people was our primary motivation? Kate Murphy, who is a Presbyterian pastor in Charlotte, North Carolina, wrote an excellent editorial last week where she observed that we call people selfish when they refuse the vaccine and then they work in nursing homes where elderly people could get sick. And she writes, I imagine if we could gather the unvaccinated workers who care for our children and our parents and our neighbors undergoing chemotherapy and actually ask them, how can you be so selfish? They might turn that question right back on us. So many people don't believe in the common good, especially when it comes to healthcare, because they've never experienced it. She goes on, many of the working poor who assist our teachers, who bathe our disabled loved ones, who stock the shelves of our stores, have life-threatening chronic medical conditions or they love people who do. And while the children of lawyers and doctors and pastors have treatment and medication to keep asthma under control, the children of first responders and nursing home attendants often do not. While those who work white-collar jobs have health insurance that provides insulin pumps that make diabetes a mostly manageable chronic condition, those who clean their offices are often forced to ration their insulin in risky ways. Some of us have access to regular high-quality medical care like mammograms that discover and treat conditions before they become life-threatening, but others can only access that life-saving care if they are lucky enough to find a free clinic and risk harassment and verbal assault by protesters who call themselves pro-life. Some of us can afford to both go out to eat and live in neighborhoods with clean air and safe drinking water. Some of us earn a living waiting tables and cannot. She goes on to say, we justify these immoral disparities by saying those who really deserve good care are getting it, and those who cannot have to do better to get better. For decades, we've taught that healthcare is an individual concern and a matter of personal responsibility, and it seems that lesson has been received. We've designed a healthcare system whose mission is to create wealth and not heal bodies. Why are we surprised when many people who have largely been left out of the system aren't interested in upholding it? There is wisdom in what she writes. We say we want a world where people care for each other, but we've built a world that prioritizes individual concerns and even freedom. In Proverbs, the contrast between wisdom and the foolish woman is stark. They both are calling out the same invitation. Did you notice that? You who are simple, turn in here. But the foolish woman doesn't put in the work. She just sits on her porch and lures in the passersby so she can lead them away from the straight paths they're walking. She tells them that stolen water is sweet and that bread eaten in secret tastes better. She doesn't work in the kitchen to prepare a feast for people. She tells them lies, and she tries to make them believe things that are not true. The foolish woman's house is literally a house of death. They don't know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. It's clear in this passage that wisdom is the one we should emulate, right? Not the foolish woman. But I confess, I read it and I think, do I want to invite people without sense to come to my table? I mean, I don't actually want to lie to people and be the foolish woman, but how generous do I really want to be with people who don't have any sense? I want to be maybe average woman. Generally, I want to be helpful, but I don't want to go out of my way for fools. Where's she talked about in Scripture? But it's clear in this passage that we're not called to be average women, and we're not called to be fools leading people to death. So why is it then so hard for us to follow Lady Wisdom? I look around at our world and plenty of people are following the foolish woman with great enthusiasm and energy. Why is it so hard for us to follow in the ways of wisdom? On one hand, I think it's because a part of it is that it requires a decent amount of work. And there are days we just don't want to put in the effort. But I'd like us to also consider the joy that comes with wisdom. In the previous chapter of Proverbs, which I invite you to read later, wisdom is described with more detail. It says she was there at the beginning of the world. She writes, I was the first of God's acts long ago. Before the mountains had been shaped, I was brought forth. When God marked the foundations of the world, she says, I was beside him like a master worker, and I was daily God's delight, playing before God at all times and rejoicing in the inhabited world and delighting in the human race. In addition to the work that wisdom requires of us, we also find joy in it and delight. And friends, our world is in need of wisdom. So can we live lives of generous wisdom as a counter to the diet of fear and violence and lies that we see in the world? What if we could instead create neighborhoods of wisdom, sharing joy and delight? How many of you have seen the show Ted Lasso? Okay, it's worth getting Apple TV just to watch this show. I highly recommend it. It stars Jason Sudeikis as an American college football coach who gets hired to coach a professional English football club, or as we would call it, soccer team. The foibles of a man who knows absolutely nothing about the rules of soccer, coaching at a professional level, are easy to imagine and don't really make you think of wisdom. But it is the inherent goodness, it is the contagious goodness of Ted Lasso that makes me think of Lady Wisdom. He cares infinitely more about the health and happiness of the people around him, no matter how poorly they behave, and they behave fairly poorly, than he cares what people think about him, or than he cares how many wins his team has. His dogged pursuit of the right way to be, and the joy he finds in simple moments, have been showing me how to walk in the ways of insight. In one scene, he asks what time it is, and someone tells him, and he leaves the room. And the next scene, you see him riding on the back of the lawnmower with the turf guy who's cleaning up the pitch. He's out there like he's riding a horse in a carnival. He's having so much fun. It's the simple things. Where have you seen wisdom lately? It's an important question because the problems of our world seem so immense to us right now. If the fabric of our nation is fraying, how do we stitch it back together, repairing the tears, strengthening the seams? Mother Teresa is quoted as saying, there are no great things, only small things with great love. So what are the small things we can do with great love? My son Alden got married last week, and my brother and sister went through a whole lot of small things with great love to get my mother to Denver for the wedding. As some of you know, my mother has had a hard season health-wise, and she has been busy following her doctor and her PT's directions so that she'd be healthy enough to come to the wedding, but it still wouldn't have happened if my siblings hadn't helped her shop for clothes and get packed and got her to the airport with all of her medical devices and gotten her all the way to Denver and to the wedding. It never would have happened without the small things they did. And the weekend was so much better because she was there. My mom danced all night long at the wedding, wearing her oxygen machine, only sitting down to breathe deeply when her oxygen saturations would start to plummet. It was a gift after the struggle of this past year to have her there and to be with everyone to celebrate. It wasn't a summit on hate crimes. It wasn't a big political statement, although both of those things have important places in our world. It was just a gathering on a lovely summer evening with people I love, celebrating love and family, and watching my mom teach my 16-year-old nephews, trying to teach them how to dance, did not solve all of our problems, but it helped mend my fraying heart. Perhaps there is wisdom in small acts of great love. What kind of a world might we yet create if we took time to notice and cultivate joy and delight? What kind of world might we yet create if wisdom were something we directed beyond ourselves and our own benefit and toward the world? Friends, let us knit the world back together with each act of joy and love and kindness and wisdom. Let us dream, pray, and work this into being together.